time to do another run around the property and look at stuff video. Yes, that's cool. I like doing these videos, and there's stuff to look at, stuff I'm doing, stuff I'm planning. Probably gonna taste a few apples. Apples are really early this year. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Normally our Septembers are pretty summer-like and pretty warm and dry, but it's starting to feel like fall already, and I'm getting anxious to get my wood processed and put away. This wood has to go in the woodshed. It's funny, I kept hearing this sound. It sounded like mice munching in the firewood pile, but it's actually these little grubs or whatever in the wood that chew on the wood, and they're really loud. You can hear them from like 20-30 feet away. Still hoping to do my cordwood challenge next year. I cut all of this wood with an axe, like everything from felling to limbing and splitting and bucking, and I'd like to do it again. Mostly, well, it really was a lot of fun and I enjoyed it a lot and I want to do it again, but it cost me a lot in terms of productivity doing other stuff that I can't necessarily afford. But I really want to do it again just so I can challenge other people to do it, and you know, it's hard for me to do that without actually doing it myself too. And it's just a great excuse to get more of my axes together, make more handles this winter, and get it all together and get more practice. These two plastic tubs here are linseed oil. I'm making sun-thickened linseed oil, so I set this out in the sun until it's about as thick as honey. I don't know if you can see in there, but this one's getting pretty thick. And then it's just, it gives it more body and it dries faster. You'll be seeing these pretty soon in a video that I haven't finished yet. So all the bark in this tube here, and that bark on the ground, all this bark in that tub, and this whole deep wall of bark here, I cut and peeled this spring. It's a lot of bark. It also represents just a lot of work, you know. A lot of work went into peeling all this bark. It'll last for years as long as I keep it dry, but pretty soon, you know, I might cut twice as much next spring. If I have the energy, I probably will. And pretty soon I'll have to build a shed just for bark. But the stuff is super valuable, and since these trees are practically going to go extinct in this area, I just want to get as much of the bark as I can right now. And I have various videos on that show peeling this bark. One of them is just on peeling this bark for tanning material. So kind of the priority this fall, I'm trying to make the priority more better shelters. So this is an old shed that I threw together. Some friends came over and helped build this about 8 years ago. And it's I'm just trying to make it a little bit better. Slap some boards up on the side to keep the rain out so I can put in shelves and store things like canning jars and stuff like that that can be kind of, you know, doesn't have to really be stored inside, but it can't really be outside either. This is coriander drying. If you don't know, is the seeds of the cilantro plant, Coriandrum sativum, maybe? And I grow a lot of this. I grow it every year and save the seeds and use them for cooking. I use quite a bit of it. I like it. It's good stuff. And of course I also use this to plant to grow cilantro. Grapes are really just starting to ripen this past week or so. This one here is Glenora, excellent. I have a little video reviewing that. This one is my favorite. This is Reliance, it has excellent flavor, seedless. So now I'm going to start eating them. I'm going to have to stop this video for a while, because once I start eating these Reliance grapes, I just want to sit here and keep stuffing more in my mouth before I'm even done eating the ones I'm eating. So yeah, there's just a lot of really big, gorgeous bunches of grapes in here. Absolutely delicious. Grapes are awesome. They're super easy to grow. They're easy to propagate. You just take a cutting and stick it in the ground and go. I like this grape a lot. This is Glenora. Kind of looks like a blueberry. It's a crunchy, listen. You hear it crunching. And again, I have reviews on both Glenora and Reliance on YouTube, which I'll link. Okay, I'm just going to set you guys down here for a minute. You can stare at the wall while I eat grapes. Alright, I'm pretty well stuffed with grapes now. we can continue on with our tour. So here's a willow wall that I built, or actually a lot of people helped build this at a project party many years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And it's gotten a lot of weather. I had to take it down and put up real boards because I just needed, we get a lot of horizontal rain here, so it was still letting a little bit of moisture into that shed, and I just needed a little bit tighter. So I'm not sure where I'm going to put this now, but as long as it stays out of the weather, I'm sure it has a lot more years left in it. Pretty cool. I'm down to 5 chickens, and I only get about 1 egg a day. No egg. No egg today. All the chicks got eaten this spring, so along with their mom and a couple of other chickens, so it's just getting down. I've been working on wood quite a bit, just, you know, getting logs when I'm cutting firewood and chopping them into things like handle blanks. Here's a handle blank for, you know, like a hatchet. This is white oak, called Oregon white oak, Quercus GARRYANA, and never used that before, but it seems like a good handle material. It seems very tough. You know, it's not the same as the eastern white oak, but it's related, and that's supposed to make good axe handles too. So this tub is almost all wood for my lathe. So when I can finally get my lathe set up, which I'm trying to work on, I'll put these on the lathe, spin them into rough shape, you know, rough cylinders, and then oil them up and season them. Now the reason I'm soaking all this is to keep it from cracking. So if I soak it, then I can just pull it out whenever, get it roughed out into shape and season it carefully. Whereas if I just leave these big chunks of wood out to dry, most of them are going to crack in ways that I really, really don't want them to. So all of these tubs are full of nice wood: black locust, tan oak, white oak, mall oak, some maple, some madrone. I don't know what else in there, but there's a lot of wood here. I need to get busy chopping and drying. Here are all my different onions drying here. Pretty soon they'll be cured and I can put them away, and these I'll be selling on eBay through the winter. And they're all up there now if anyone's interested in buying onions. These are all multiplier onions, which means that you plant one and they grow a cluster of onions from one onion planted. They're pretty neat. These are shallots, those are potato onions, these are a different kind of shallot. This is a very good apple called SUNTAN, and it has not performed well for me, but I was about to give up on it, but last year it actually produced some good apples, so now I'm thinking I'm going to move this whole tree. This tree is about 9 years old, and look how small it is. It just is in a really bad spot. It's not happy, it's never performed well. And I think if I just cut it way, way back really hard and try to dig up quite a bit of the root, it's probably better for me to move this tree than to start over with a completely new tree. Franken tree over here just almost has nothing on it. I mean, there's just a few apples over here. You know, it just took the year off. It bore really heavy last year, and it did that during a major drought. Actually a 2-year drought, so it was the second year in a 2-year drought, and this year it was just like, forget it, I'm going on vacation. So Franken tree really took the year off, but we should have a huge crop, you know, weather permitting. We should have a huge crop next year on here. And I really need to prune this tree. It's out of control. Here's my charcoal pit. I've started to fill it in. I just threw in a bunch of gross stuff, like you can see there's an old crusty hide there that got ruined. Just weird stuff out of the freezer that I didn't want to throw in the compost pile. You know, a few pieces of cardboard and cloth just because it was convenient. So this will be filling up through this winter as I have stuff to throw in there, gut piles and weeds and all kinds of stuff. Now this should fill up pretty fast because for every scoop of charcoal, I put in 9 scoops of dirt. So that really adds up. You know, if I throw something in there and I cover it with a little bit of charcoal, before I know it, I've got 5 scoops of charcoal, and then what's 5 times 9? 45 scoops of dirt. It is not a very good year for apples, but let's see what we can scrounge up here. Yuck. All right. This one is LAXTON'S EPICURE. It could be ready. I just saw a video, Stephen Hayes. His channel is Stephen Hayes UK. Grows apples. Does a lot of apple reviews. Check him out. He just was showing this in one of his videos, and I would think I'd be ahead on ripening from him, but you never really know. So let's taste this one. It doesn't taste totally ripe to me. It doesn't look totally ripe either. There's 1 or 2 more hanging on here, so I'll let them ripen more. and then try it again. This apple is called PITMASTON pineapple. So far I've not had a specimen of this over the last 3 years it's fruited that was really worth eating. Very, very soft and mealy. Flavor, so-so. It may just be too hot here for PITMASTON pineapple. It's an English apple. So this apple is called Mother. There were a few American apples that were adopted by the English, and this is one of them. You see the birds have been pecking on this one. This is a very good apple. It's been impressing me more and more. This is probably the 3rd year it's fruited. 2nd or 3rd year. It has a very rich flavor, especially for an early-ish apple. It's not like an early summer apple, really. I mean, I was eating some of them in August, but it's more like an early September apple. But it really is quite good. Yeah, that's really delicious. It has a very rich, fruity flavor and kind of a coarse textured flesh. I'll probably finish this apple. This apple down here is called ZABERGAU, or maybe it's ZABERGAU. REINETTE. Now this one has codling moth. You see that little spot right there? That's means it has a bug in it. And usually those will ripen earlier, so I'll pick this one to try. This seems to be better this year. I've munched on a few of them, and it's a very large apple. This is actually a small specimen compared to what it's grown in the last few years, but I think that it just bore a lot of apples this year. So, you know, the ones that are there are smaller, which is typical. If you really want really large apples, you need to thin. It's very good. Nice flavor, nice flavor. I'm pretty impressed. It's a pretty high acid apple. It's pretty russety, but it's not really, doesn't really taste like kind of the classic russet. It's a very interesting apple. It's kind of light in weight. It's not a juicy apple. It has a somewhat dry flesh. I was kind of going to give up on this for the first couple years. It seemed like it was big, but really not that good. But sometimes it just takes several years for apples to come into their own and start producing better tasting fruit. So it's good to give them times. You know, you're not going to plant these things and then get fruit the first year and be like, oh, now I know what this apple is all about. You don't even know when to pick them the first year, basically. And you might only have a couple. You might end up picking them both too early. But, you know, this one seems to be shaping up over, this is probably the 3rd or 4th year it's fruited. Now I have the quandary that I want to keep eating this apple, but I have to keep talking. So this is my saffron bed. It doesn't look like much, but it is full of bulbs that are just waiting to shoot up their little flowers. And that will happen very soon. So I'm going to get this bed cleaned up a little bit. It's got a bunch of weeds in it and stuff. These are the leaves from the old saffron plants here. This kind of, it forms this kind of neat mat. Now saffron is like a little crocus flower, and it comes up before the leaves. So the flowers just appear out of nowhere, these little purple flowers. You harvest the center of the flower for saffron threads, the spice saffron, and then they start, you know, eventually they start growing leaves and they grow through the winter. And then they die back in the spring and sit there and wait for the next fall. So they're a fall blooming flower, kind of unusual. Okay, I'm going to make a little pile here of the apples that I actually want to finish. It's so fun running around tasting all these apples. Now here's an interesting apple. This is COE'S Golden Drop. Small apple, very russety. It's got this beautiful red color. I don't know if you can see in video how amazing that color is, but it really is remarkable. It's actually very tasty, even though it's not ripe. This has an intense aromatic flavor that I can't quite place, but it reminds me of something. So this one that's further down in the shade is very damaged. Usually damaged apples, especially if they have bugs in them, will ripen earlier. Okay, yeah, what that flavor is the English call it pear drop. It's kind of like a candy-like flavor. It must have been, you know, a type of candy, pear drops. I'm quite sure that's what I'm tasting. It's kind of a very, very aromatic candy-like flavor. That's cool. This is very promising. This is an extremely light, dry-fleshed apple. but it has a lot of concentrated flavor. And I don't believe that it's ready yet, so it should hopefully improve as the season progresses. Very, very interesting flavor, very compelling. I'll probably finish this even though it's not ripe, just because that flavor is so interesting. Now this apple is labeled as Sunrise, but I don't know that it actually is. I think this one is ripe. We could eat this one. It seems to bear a lot of similarity to the apple I have labeled as Sunrise on another tree. It's an early apple, kind of bland in a way, but still pleasant, sweet, nice crunchy flavor. Yeah, I actually would say that's very good. This may be the best one I've ever eaten. It has these really mild flavors like sugarcane, melon, green grape kind of flavors. You know, nothing like real aromatic or in your face, but still pleasant and refreshing. And the texture on this is quite excellent. You can see how it cleaved off super clean there. It's kind of got a nice crunchy texture. Yeah, that's really encouraging, but there's no doubt I'm going to enjoy finishing this apple. Here is one of my seedling apples, and this tree had several apples, but they all got sunburned very badly, very early. This particular variety is obviously going to be prone to sunburn. I've got this one back here shaded, and it's covered with this little thing. This is kind of like a pantyhose for your foot. They're called footies or foot socks, and they're just these little disposable things that people put on their feet when they're trying on shoes in the shoe store. And they make pretty good fruit protectors. Nothing makes a really good fruit protector, a great fruit protector, but these are pretty good. It keeps the birds off them, and in this case it's helping to keep the sun off. It definitely has a tendency to red flesh because I've bitten into a couple of the early ones that got sunburned. Just now starting to turn pink inside. So I only have this one specimen of that one, unfortunately. And hopefully I'll get to pick it at the right time, you know, but there's a really, really good chance that I won't, because I just won't know when to pick it. You kind of learn what to look for, but every apple's different, and it's pretty hard to just guess randomly if you have not eaten that particular variety of apple. Here is another one. I think we're going to get to taste about 4 different ones this year. Now, one parent of all of these is a late apple called grenadine, or late red-fleshed apple, and it ripens in late November into December. So I'm expecting a lot of these to ripen late. This one doesn't look anywhere close to ripe. Now, I clipped the foot sock thing onto a branch, so if the apple breaks off of the tree and tries to fall, it'll get caught in there like a little bag and hang until I can come and rescue it. Here's another one, also not ripe. Here's a nice looking one. Looks like this one has 2 fruits. Now, I had 12 different apples in here flowered this year, but I did not really get out enough and pollinate them, I guess, and there's so few bees this year. There are almost no honeybees this year. So I don't think, you know, just not that many of them got pollinated. So I'm really hoping for a big crop in here next year. That's a pretty nice looking apple. Yeah, we'll see. Now, if you read Michael Pollan's book, The Botany of Desire, you will come away indoctrinated with the idea that any apple you grow from a seed will almost certainly be completely inedible, and that is bogus. Now, early this year, I showed a tree that I had bent all around and looped the branches back together into hoops. This is it. I also summer pruned it, so now it's kind of got this shrub-like effect here. As you can see in here, the branches are twisted together, sort of like arches or hoops. And all I'm really trying to do is size control this and keep it low so that that shoot right there can grow up and become a tree. I'm really enjoying this Sunrise apple. It's also extremely sweet, and I'm a total sugarhead, so to me, the sweeter fruit is, the better. It's quite good. I'm very encouraged by this specimen here. Here are this year's apple seedlings. You can see they look very good. They're quite healthy. We have a lot of red pigment going on here. Very nice, very nice. I could have pushed these harder and grown them taller, but at this point I just don't even care. They're big enough to graft. I've got other things to worry about. I just planted this bed today. It is carrots and rutabagas. I've been planting the winter garden. It's late. It should have been planted already. I just poured this mat out on the bed. This is what I've been calling a manure mat, and it's like a manure slurry, and the plants just love it. You can see how healthy these plants look right now. and it really protects the soil. So since these chard and kale plants are going to be here all winter long, I want this nice mat on here because it's going to protect the soil from the pounding rain, and these guys are just going to grow happily along through the entire winter. Now this is one of my charcoal beds. So this has 33% charcoal buried to 2 feet. Look at the green on that parsley. It is just really, really happy. This tomato is also in that bed. It doesn't look like much, but this is a kind of dwarfish sized tomato. The foliage is very healthy, except it's starting to get late blight, but the late blight is late. It doesn't seem to be affecting the fruit yet, so I think it's doing better. And there's also some carrots in here. Anyway, this bed has done really, really well. Between that one, really all of my biochar beds look way better than the rest of the garden. This zucchini has turned into like this 3-headed monster. It's split into 3 vines, and it's been very productive all season. It's just been really healthy, and it's growing smack on a 25% charcoal bed. Now here are my peppers, which are just starting to ripen up, and these big ones are ANAHEIMs. Those are the ones that I make chili powder out of. I did a video on that. I will link it. This yellow one here is called Ho Chi Minh, and this is basically a yellow cayenne. I make hot sauce with it. It makes very good hot sauce. Now because I don't dig, I'm able to plant my winter cover crops and winter crops right underneath my summer crops. So today you can see there's little divots here. I planted fava beans. Now these fava beans will be about 6 inches tall by the time it's time to pull the peppers out, so they'll have like a really good head start for the winter. And then they'll kind of sit around for the winter, and then in the spring they'll grow really tall and produce a ton of fava beans. Fava beans are good. I really like them. I just had some for lunch out of the freezer that were at least 2 years old, and they were excellent. They were perfectly fine out of the freezer, really old, 2 to 3 years old. This bed is all greens, mustard greens of various kinds, and Napa cabbage, as in Chinese cabbage. It's kind of football shaped, and that will be made into kimchi. So hopefully, if all goes well, I will have a fridge stuffed full of big jars of kimchi made with this daikon radish and those chilies, the dried chilies turned into chili powder, and ginger and all that stuff. I love kimchi. I can eat tons of the stuff. It is one of my favorite fermented foods. I'm not like a huge, giant fermented food nut. There's certain things I like, but kimchi I can eat in large quantities. I mean, you can eat it pretty much every day. Okay, I'm just going to grab a couple carrots for dinner here, and then I'm going to sign off because that was a pretty long walk around video. Look at that beautiful carrot. This is a variety called Touchon, and it is great. It is a great homestead carrot. It is good for keeping in the ground if you live in a mild climate. I just grow these and pull them out of the ground all winter as needed. It is a very tasty carrot, and it never gets woody. Look who I just ran into. Little rattlesnake. Looks like probably a baby from last year. Oh, he's so cute. What a beautiful creature. Look at that pattern. He's a little bit chilly. Obviously reptile, cold-blooded. When the weather gets cool, the animal gets cool and stops functioning. Another thing you'll notice about rattlesnakes, they have this big triangular shaped head, then a skinny neck, and then this big fat body behind it. Trying to find a crevice under the firewood to crawl back into. Well, I kill these guys once in a while when they're real close to the house. I'm probably just going to let this one go. I really prefer not to kill them. They eat a lot of rodents. I'd like to zoom in just a little closer, but that would not be safe. All right, Snake, good night. I'm going to go back to stacking my firewood.